Tēnā koe te māngai. To the Minister of Corrections, what consultation, if any, did he undertake with Māori before the government decided the treaty provision should be removed from the Corrections Amendment Bill, and is he concerned that this decision will increase the over-representation of Māori within our prisons?
The Honourable Shane Jones.
Sir, in respect of the question pertaining to consultation that took place during the election 2023.
Does he agree that people in prison having access to their culture and identity is an important step towards successful rehabilitation and reintegration?
Speaker, there are programs in our prison system, not the least of which is hokairangi, but if many of the prisoners practice their culture, they wouldn't be there in the first place.
If there are no treaty provisions within the Corrections Act and no active strategy to reduce the overrepresentation of Māori in prisons, given hokairangi expires this year, how will corrections be held accountable for reducing...
The moment the camera flicks on, you can practically hear the kettle boiling in the background, because I'm about to take you straight into the most unintentionally entertaining political moment of the year. Picture this: the New Zealand Parliament, normally the place where people say very serious things in very serious voices, suddenly turning into a full-blown comedy special because David Seymour has just ushered in what he calls a new era of accountability. And if you're anything like me, you're already leaning forward, popcorn in hand, wondering if this new era involves laser beams, a dramatic soundtrack, and maybe one of those inflatable tube men from car dealerships waving around every time someone asks a question. But no, it's even better. It's politicians trying to sound responsible. That's the part that gets me every time. Before we dive into the footage, can I ask you for a quick favor? If you're enjoying this content, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Believe it or not, over 98% of viewers watch without subscribing. It's completely free for you, but it means the world to us and helps the channel grow. So, did you click it? Awesome, thank you. Now let's get into the video. Now, in true Kiwi fashion, Seymour steps up and speaks with the exact confidence of a man who's had 2 long blacks and 1 existential crisis before lunch. The speaker calls on him, and immediately Seymour fires off with that classic, "Mr. Speaker, why so much talk?" as if he's somehow forgotten that the entire purpose of Parliament is literally people talking. And instantly, I'm thinking, mate, if you're trying to reduce the talking, you're in the wrong building. But the charm of it, the absolute charm, is that he asks this while clearly preparing to talk for ages himself, like a bloke who tells you he's leaving the barbecue early and is still there 2 hours later explaining the philosophy of sausages. He then launches into how the passing of the regulator. Then he talks about creating guidance for officials, because apparently even the government needs instructions like those novelty booklets titled, "So You've Decided to Be Responsible." And then, my favorite part, he mentions appointing a regulatory standards board. A watchdog. A metaphorical guard dog. And for a moment, I imagine it's an actual dog, like a very serious golden retriever wearing a tiny suit, sitting at a parliamentary desk, pouring at legislation, giving a subtle boof whenever something doesn't meet regulatory standards. A hero. A legend. Better attendance than half the MPs. When Seymour gets asked how the Act will help decision makers, he launches into this bit about how politicians have suffered through long, ponderous, ineffective regulatory impact statements, and you can feel the whole room silently nodding because yes, they too have been traumatized by 70-page documents written entirely in bureaucrat. But Seymour tells us not to worry because now, things will be replaced with consistency accountability statements, which honestly sounds like someone took 2 normal words and glued them together into a superhero name. Consistency accountability statement man. Caped. Ready. Armed with spreadsheets. According to Seymour, these new statements will be straightforward, clear, and contain exactly what they're legally required to and nothing else, which, considering the average government document includes at least 3 paragraphs explaining why the paragraph exists, is quite revolutionary. You can almost feel the collective relief from everyone who's ever had to read one of those documents without falling asleep mid-sentence. Then comes the real heart-grabber. Seymour starts describing how this new act will help public servants think from the beginning, and I mean asterisk from the very beginning asterisk, like day one, before the first cup of tea, before the first slightly passive-aggressive email, about how the decisions affect everyday New Zealanders. The moment the camera blinks awake, you can practically hear the kettle boiling in the background, because today's episode kicks off with the energy of a Kiwi who's had far too much breakfast adrenaline and not nearly enough common sense to slow down. You know that feeling when your cousin tells you he's just fixing the lawnmower, then suddenly there's smoke, sirens, and a confused neighbor holding a sausage roll? That's the exact vibe as we dive into the latest political theater, starring an absolutely sensational showdown where Seymour, in full dramatic glory, manages to tear through arguments like a seagull ripping open a packet of hot chips on a windy Dunedin beach. And look, before we go any further, this is parody, all right? We are not here to endorse, destroy, cancel, or crown anyone. We are just here to laugh, shake our heads, and wonder how on earth politics became the most binge-worthy reality show in Aotearoa. So picture this. The Senate room is humming, everyone sitting up with the posture of students trying to look like they did the homework, and in swoops this clip from a co-leader laying it all out like she's explaining the last pudding disappearing from the fridge. She says this bill isn't about equity or equal rights, nah, nothing so wholesome. According to her, it's the final stand, the last bastion, that don't touch our stuff or the whole moana will crumble like a stale lamington kind of argument. And she says, with a tone that would make Gandalf proud, that if you remove certain rights, you basically open the floodgates to exploitation.